Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours, where we assemble every single day to answer your media and tech-related production questions. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. Alexander, what's first on our agenda?
First question is coming in from David Brady in New York City, New York. Our playback solutions are a mix of Mitti and Playback Pro. We're trying to come up with a baseline encoding profile to standardize on. What are some key considerations to factor in? Codec, wrapper, audio, mix, frame rate.
And we're turning right around and going back to Alexander for the answer. Alexander?
So ProRes is probably my favorite playback profile just because the files playback incredibly smoothly on a Mac. However, of course, the files are going to be often too big for most setups. So I do like, for small files, H.265 encoding, which is HEVC, high efficiency codec. I find that the files comparatively at the same resolution and everything, the files are a little bit smaller, and often the compression seems to look a little bit better. So that's usually what I prefer, to keep it small. Obviously, generally when working with video, 48 kilohertz sample rate, and then of course the resolution and frame rate. Well, I mean, the frame rate I would probably set it to, if you're working in the internet world of video, if you've got a live stream with incoming Zoom sources and you need to play back video, for example, you're generally working at 30 frames per second, so whole, not fractional frame rates. If you're live streaming to those platforms like YouTube, for example, it would generally be 30 or 60, so it really just depends.
Courtney Gooden, your thoughts?
Yeah, it depends on your destination, too. Since you live in the broadcast world of CBS, it could be that you have to decode at 1080i. So you might take a look at where you're going to be sending these, decoding and sending these images. Also, I find that a more common denominator is better cross-platform. I would not encode in ProRes because of that, because ProRes codecs on the Windows platform are not very good and not very fast and usually not accelerated. So I would do H.264, which is the most common encode, but even these days, or MPEG-4, even these days, some TVs, can't decode MPEG-4. Older TVs made about 10 or 11 years ago still don't have hardware decode of MPEG-4. They have MPEG-2, which is what all satellite and broadcast television arrives in over cable, but not MPEG-4. So MPEG-4, MPEG-2 is the safest. MPEG-4 is the most universal these days for modern day decoding, and about 10 megabits to 30 megabits, as long as you're not trying to do trick play modes where you're going backwards. If you're just playing out forward, next frame, next frame, next frame, long GOP will work fine. If you're trying to do things where you're shuttling back and forth with frames, then of course you have to go with something other than a long GOP encoder.
The old truism that the great thing about codecs as a standard are there are so many of them, and I've been battling this for my entire career, and I don't expect it to end anytime soon. Distribution codecs are one thing, shooting codecs are another thing, and you really have to talk to people up and down your particular line and decide what your target is. I used to have to do a lot of encodings of spots, commercials for various things, and I think I got it down to 3 basic encodes, one of which was a high-res that I'd put on Vimeo, and a lot of our distribution sources would pull it down from there after it had been transcoded into whatever it is that Vimeo encodes things to. And a lot of people were able to use that. But for the broadcast people, I always used to have to do a separate encode. Most of those were DNX HD or MXF. There were a lot of MXF wrappers required in the broadcast world. And oddly, audio level set at negative 24 LUFS. For almost everybody else, I had to switch to negative 16 LUFS, and it's just a mess out there, depending on which level of the production you're at. For distribution codecs, I agree that kind of H.264 has been a standard for a lot of people for a long time. If you're just trying to send it to somebody to watch, pretty much everybody in the world can use some format, some variant of H.264. But if they're going to take your files and work on them, it becomes a whole different ballgame. So I'm sorry it's not any easier than that, David. But at least that's what I've seen out there. The requests are still legion, and there's always seems to be somebody in some outlet somewhere that needs a different flavor of encode. Next question.
This one's coming in from Brett Below in Appleton, Wisconsin, USA. What's your workflow for managing ProRes RAW files without filling every drive you own?
Jason Bache is going to take this on.
Well, the first rule is only shoot ProRes when you are absolutely certain that you need it. For example, unless you are going to have a colorist finish out what your finished product is, I think you don't really need ProRes frequently for a lot of things. That said, so yeah, only shoot it when you need it, and only retain the files that end up being part of your larger edit. Everything else should never even touch your NLE. And I guess the last part of it is only touch the ProRes when you are absolutely finished with it. I usually will take ProRes, put it into edit ready, and create the light versions of it. Use those even through the revisions of the edit, and only reconnect when I'm rendering.
Yeah, interestingly, ProRes RAW is a very lightly compressed format, and RAW files, I mean, true RAW files are huge. ProRes RAW is substantially smaller, so you already have a smaller file format to work with if you're working in ProRes RAW. But Apple has an incredibly useful, simple workflow for ProRes RAW files kind of built into every Mac editing platform that I've seen, that just allows you to throw files in and it'll do the base grade and the rest of those things kind of automatically for you, which is really a time saver. But as to a backup storage solution, I haven't found anything other than just keeping secondary and tertiary of those original files on a drive and then pull them into my NLE. And at that point, the NLE I use, Final Cut, and I think Premiere and the rest of them do this too, have a pretty robust proxy workflow that will allow you to get down into smaller files to do your actual cutting with. And then at the end, you literally just flip a switch and it replaces those files from the smaller files to the original ones to maximize full quality. So I don't really think too much about it. I haven't had a big storage problem in that workflow for a long time, but you just have to be wise. Files are getting bigger, particularly since the sensors are getting so much bigger and the original data streams, we're up in 8K files and things like that come out of cameras. They're just big. It's hard to handle. Next question.
This question is coming in from Jack Kennan in Phoenix, Arizona, USA. What are the panelists' thoughts on the DJI Pocket 3? We have been testing different cameras to use inside of vehicles while driving and off-roading and found the FX6 to be too cumbersome for our rigs. Jeffrey Powers is going to start us out here. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I can't imagine that FX7 to be in the car if they're that big. So I love the Pocket 3s a lot. I don't have the 3, I have the 2. I've used the 3. The gimbal is great when you're driving around, because if there's any type of vibration, any type of shake, that gimbal is going to compensate for that. So you don't need too much. However, when you get into the off-roading, the heads, the motors that's trying to keep the stabilization on that camera might get a little bit too overwhelmed, and then you start finding that it's going to have a little bit more shake to it. There are some third-party additions that you can use for the Pocket 3 that help with any type of extra shake. But once again, if you're talking like super jarring, going over boulders or going over rough patches type shake, you might get a little bit more on that. The other thing is you can go vertical or horizontal, completely horizontal with the DJI Pocket, as opposed to vertical, where the gimbal then turns 90 degrees to make it the horizontal aspect. So if you can have it flat, like run it across the top of the car or something like that, that might help with that. But I'm assuming you're pointing at people, which makes that a little bit more difficult.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, so the FX6 does have a, it's a box style format camera, but it is on the larger side. I'm very impressed with some of the images that I've seen come out of these DJI cameras. That said, the camera sensors are still fairly small. You may also want to look at something like these Panasonic Lumix box style full frame cameras. If you look at the BHS1, you can actually see, if I try to find a side profile here, these things have SDI out. They're remotely controllable. I've seen these used on productions mounted to cars. If I scroll down here, there's a good shot of it here with a lens, and you can just see how much small, like if you actually put this side by side to an FX6, it's like half the depth of an FX6. So that's another option if you want really the best possible image quality with the most dynamic range available to you. Of course, you can, optionally get third-party gimbals for stuff like that.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, unfortunately, the best quality image may go out the window if your gimbal isn't up to the job of keeping that image steady, or the software image stabilization or hardware image stabilization within the lens itself. I like the Pocket 3 because the laws of physics are in your favor because the mass is so low. It can react a little faster and keep that image a little more stable than something with a heavier camera in it. And the price, of course, is better. And these days, the Pocket 3 has, the ability to put, lens modifiers on the front, including, neutral density filters and or even wide angle adapters. And of course, you're going to want to stay with a wide angle lens anyway, if you're going to be shooting out the window of shooting forward on a car that's moving over heavy terrain. I did find there are a lot of reviews. There are some knockoffs up there of the DJI Pocket 3, one called the Extra Muse vlogging camera. And there's a guy that did this YouTube video here of it, and it's $549 compared to $996 for the Pocket 3, and he compares them side by side and seems to think that they're exactly the same camera. So look around. You might be able to save some money and try that out. The other neat thing about the Pocket 3 is from the app inside the car, if you mount it outside, you can control, pan, tilt, and you can guide it through a move, look backwards, look forwards, with a single tap of the remote. So it's got some neat moves on it that you can remotely control besides just taking out the bump of the moving over terrain.
Jeffrey Powers, you want to revisit this?
Yeah, first of all, Courtney, there have been some reports that some of those knockoff cameras are actually DJI cameras that they've been using to
just relabeled?
get over the tariff issues. So, here's another option there, Jack, and that is instead of go the DJI Pocket route, go for the Insta360 RS1 if you really need a good looking sensor. This is a 1-inch sensor. It's also doing 360, so you could have the camera poised looking out the car and then, of course, looking into the vehicle. And, of course, you want to angle it so any seams will kind of be in areas that you don't record anyway. And then somebody in post can go and turn it into an HD video and remove all that shake that comes out of it.
Yeah, I have to admit, the first time I had my, not Pocket Osmo, but the original Osmo 4 mounted on my iPhone, or my iPhone was mounted on it, and I was standing in the back of Chris Fenwick's pickup truck as we were blasting through the desert, shooting with a handheld. I came back, I was astonished at what good footage came out of that, at least the appearance of it. So the gimbals have come a long, long way. I would imagine that the Pocket 3 would be as good as any of them. I don't know if it's exactly the right balance of cost versus features, but I will speak highly of my first experiences with them some years ago. They seem to make a really solid product, and their motion stability software seems to be right on, plus all the little motors in there that keep things leveled. They seem to do an extraordinary job. At least that was my experience. Next question.
This question is coming in from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. Canon C50 showing backordered, available in February, or not available from B&H, Adorama, etc., but arrives before Christmas from Amazon. Is this normal?
Alexander Knight, you want to weigh in on distribution through Amazon?
Well, I haven't checked Amazon, and I'm guessing you're looking at Amazon USA. So if it is being sold and shipped directly from Amazon, it sounds like Amazon got their first hands on the initial shipment of it, and that's what happens sometimes. So, as far as stuff being back ordered is concerned, I've noticed an interesting trend, because I know over the last 5 years we had a lot of challenges during COVID with certain chip manufacturing companies not having certain chips available and component shortages, and it was really bad for about 3 years, and then it got better for a while. But I've noticed in the last 6 months things have gotten worse. As somebody who sells a lot of products, I've noticed a lot of companies have started to have increasingly long wait times to get products now, anything related to electronics. I know SHURE is struggling to get a lot of products out the door right now. A lot of wireless products are back ordered just after Christmas. I had stuff on order in October that says is not going to be showing up until January across the board, like a lot of products. So we're seeing this in the industry in general right now. I'm not sure what the issue is. My only guess is that it's just increased demand. I know sales are up in many categories across the board. So my suspicion is it's just increased demand, not enough supply. They're trying to make this stuff as fast as they can.
It'd be interesting. You're in Canada, and so the tariffs from the U.S. seem to have caused some backlogs, or at least a diminishing of
that's gone now.
Things.
That's been gone for a number of months.
Has it for you?
Yeah.
Oh, the tariff backlogs.
They got rid of those.
Okay. No, I was just wondering whether everything on boards like in the U.S. or something like that caused some issues or things like that, but I don't know. Courtney Gooden, thoughts?
Yeah, this could still be a tariff issue because the threat of the tariffs, and there may be new tariffs threatening for January 1st. We don't know. They change on a daily basis. I did just check Amazon, and look, here is the EOS body only for $38.99 of a deliverable by day after tomorrow. And you could even get the small rig kit for it for $119. I can get it today. Because Amazon buys up large, resellers who sell through Amazon will ship large shipments to Amazon to store in their warehouses, where they will sit and do distribution from their warehouses. So they usually have a large stock in their warehouses and their regional warehouses that they can draw from. And so they just get large shipments from these major manufacturers. So when those are all gone, then there may be a wait, and B&H maybe says they do a high turnover at B&H, so and they don't have a lot of warehouses. I think just the one in New York. So maybe when they're gone from B&H's back room, they're stuck until they can get another shipment from Japan, and they may be waiting for the tariffs to kick in or kick off before they order more.
Next question.
This one comes in from the QR code Jeremy Abro in Massachusetts. I'm thinking about adding a Sony PTZ camera to my assortment of Sony cameras I use for indoor sports live streaming. Can you suggest a model that will offer good low light performance in the 3K range? Thank you.
I'm not used to the which are at what thing, but I did take a quick look, and I did notice there's two different groups of Sony cameras. They have a premium line, and I would imagine these guys are reasonably expensive. And then there's a standard line below that are probably more down in the area that you're looking for. But Jason Bache, do you have some more info?
Not a ton. I think your options for great low light performance, of course, are going to be a direct corollary of the size of your sensor, like almost certainly at this level. The ones we used at NAB a couple years ago were fantastic, and they were a lot more than $3,000. So I'm not sure if you can really get a Sony for 3K that's going to be impressive in low light.
Bill, you're muted.
Oh, am I muted? Sorry about that. I was thinking there's that difference between the premium line and the kind of standard line for them. I'd look at the difference in the features between there and see if there's something that you need that means you're stuck in premium, and you may have trouble hitting that price point if you need to go up to the premium line. Next question.
This one comes from Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona, USA. Yesterday, I saw the option to stream live to Shorts on YouTube. I checked the box and was able to view the stream going to the Shorts feed, but now I can't find it. Anyone else experience this?
Jeffrey Powers, have you run into this?
So yeah, they've been working on this with YouTube. It's basically if you're using the desktop, you won't see it. If you're using the mobile, you will see it. And I'm not sure. I don't think there's any other real limitations at this point with that. So maybe it's just if they just can't handle the live streams right now, that it gets taken down, because sometimes that has happened where you wouldn't be able to live stream because just connection issues or something like that. But for the most part, you got to be on your mobile device and you got to be in vertical mode to do that. If you do it started in horizontal mode, you might not see anything.
Jason Bache.
I mean, and if you think about what Jeffrey just said, it makes perfect sense. Kind of the intent of shorts are to be incredibly concise, and that just can't be done live. It's kind of antithetical to the concept of shorts. So my understanding of this is that if you go vertical live, other people can see your live short. It will appear while you're live, but it's not going to, somehow bubble back as a live thing that you can later play around with.
Next question.
This is one of my questions. What's the current state of the union on live streaming to vertical video and platforms like Instagram and TikTok? Do they still have weird limitations, like only being able to live stream for 60 minutes?
We're getting parallel questions here. Jason Bache, what's your thought?
So it depends on how you define weird limitations. Mostly the 60-minute limit is gone. I just checked this. Instagram, you need at least 1,000 followers to be public and initiate a live broadcast. And those are capped at 4 hours. For TikTok, let's see. Brands aim for 30 to 40 minutes, and the follower count also has to be at around 1,000. You also have to prove your age, and I believe that's gone to be the case just about everywhere. Let's see. Yeah. And the TikTok can be live for up to 60 minutes.
Jeffrey Powers, thoughts?
So I just checked my TikTok because I can live stream from my TikTok. I don't have 1,000 followers. You should follow me. So, but the other thing that you can do is you can also, with TikTok, you can also live stream horizontally as well as vertically. And they're trying to really push the horizontal videos because they want to start looking more like a YouTube out of this whole thing. So, but I'm not sure about that 1,000 count, because I've had my TikTok since 2018, so maybe it's just I've been on the system long enough, I've been verified enough for the ability to do live streams.
Interestingly enough, next question.
This one is from Matt Cool in Montreal, Canada. I own 3 Panasonic AW-UE150 PTZ cameras, and I'm wondering if anyone has had success with the auto tracking feature. I've been trying, but the camera often goes wild and pans away from the subject. Any suggestions?
Ooh, that doesn't sound good. Jason, thoughts?
Yeah, this really shouldn't be called auto tracking. It's more like good centering most of the time, because that's really what it's best at doing. So what I've found is, in general, as long as the thing you're trying to track isn't wildly out of the frame, then the tracking is relatively good. Keep in mind that the Panasonic line is not an iPhone. It doesn't have, a wide camera that's just perfectly off, so that if it appears out of the frame, it can still be tracked so that when it goes back in, it will just nicely move back in. So, yeah, if it loses its pattern, not auto tracking.
I found it interesting that Panasonic apparently has 3 lines of cameras. They've got their Platinum series, they've got a Premium series, and they've got a Pro series. And so I find that interesting. I was just taking a quick look through their whole listings and to see which was what and where they might come in price-wise compared to those Sonys we just looked at, but I didn't see anything right off the top. So other than pushing out a bunch of learn more buttons and trying to create a grid, which may be the only way you can kind of figure out whether it goes on that way. And also, whenever I hear about some anomaly like this, losing tracking and going wild, It seems to me that's a good time to hit the boards where people who complain about things generally put their complaints. And I don't ever take that as gospel. I mean, somebody can just have a bad version of something, but it does tell me whether or not it's an ongoing thread concern and what people are doing to figure out how to stop it from doing that. I found a lot of solutions in looking at some of the bulletin boards and some of the Reddits and things like that about whether these problems are widespread or specific to a particular person. Next question.
This question comes from Brett Below in Appleton, Wisconsin, USA. How are you handling lens choices? Whoa. Okay, something just jumped there.
Whoa, what did it just?
Did we lose that question? Oh,
yeah, let me
Robert
go back and see if
Over.
I can push it back. Yeah, here we go. That should have, did that put it back on desk?
Yeah. Yeah. How are you handling lens choices for productions that need both 16:9 and vertical 9:16 framing?
Jason Bache is going to start us off.
So I'll admit, I've never actually had a professional production gig where this is an absolute requirement. Like, never. So that said, I've seen very creative ways to do this, and usually the lenses are the simplest part of it. The first trick here is discipline. As long as you understand rule of thirds and it becomes muscle memory, you're simply just framing creatively and, being very mindful of the graphics and making sure nothing that matters isn't in that center piece. The lens part, and the reason that I say it really doesn't matter, is that, the distortion, the darkness, the oddities of lenses between low end and high end matter the least right in the center square of the lens. So as long as you're framing correctly, it really isn't going to matter. My favorite way, by the way, to see this fixed is just an iPhone and an iPhone that are perfectly aligned and just capturing the same field and both streaming separately.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I've been on a number of shoots doing teleprompter on certain things. The problem you have, if you're just doing a single talking head, yeah, you can pick a lens that will work for both. But the problem is if you have two people, like an interview situation, where you've got two people facing each other, and you're shooting, 16:9, and then social media comes in and says, now we got to shoot the social media version. It's got to be vertical. And you try and frame two people in the frame, it's just not going to work for both. So they would send in a separate, in the shoots that I've been on, they've had a regular, Sony camera for the main interview 2-shot for the 16:9, and then a person steps in with a phone and they actually shoot the 9:16 with individuals on the phone separately, and don't try and do one interview for both. They actually have to do two interviews because the framing is so far off that finding one lens that it'll be a great compromise to the 16:9 to try and frame a 2-shot in 9:16. So depends on what you're shooting. If you're just shooting a single, influencer talking to the camera, yeah, you can do it. Just go for the square type framing and have it go with a lot of fluff on the outside for the 16:9 and none of that on the 9:16, and you should get by all right.
So a couple of strategies that I've employed. Number one, I was interested that the Sony camera that I just switched on to has a persistent overlay in vertical that'll come on and just put, lines top to bottom on that, at least reminding you where the vertical framing is should you wish to punch in on your horizontal shot and use that. It's a nice little visual reminder. The other thing that I've found is that as resolutions go up, if you can shoot in something like 8K, you can actually push in and get really good solid verticals of the two people on the outside of a reasonably framed 16:9 wide shot. You can push in and still get really pretty high resolution on the two verticals that you would cut out of that. For me, that's always been an issue of how I'm going to direct the people. I don't like the idea of two profiles, cutting back and forth to them. I'd prefer to cant those people toward the camera a little bit and have kind of what I would consider a nose room framing on the left shot and the right shot if I'm going to do that in post. But you have to do that in post. You can't get them both. They get pretty small, which is why the extra resolution helps you if you're going to try to do two ISOs for vertical out of one wide screen. Next question.
This one's coming from Robert A. Ober in Houston, Texas. I hope you folks are all well and good. I've used a ME66/K6 coming. Anybody know why the combos were discontinued, just not selling anymore?
Jeffrey Powers is going to weigh in on this. Jeffrey?
So from everything that I've seen is that this combo actually was discontinued back in 2020 and no replacement was done from there. So it means one of three things. The first is COVID knocked it out. The second is we had that chip warehouse fire that they might have just had no internal chips to put into it. And then, of course, third, is it worth manufacturing? Did they sell enough to actually continue the line from there? So I don't see any other replacements online. Maybe Courtney has some clue into that, but that's what I'm finding right now.
Courtney, what say you?
Also, I think, originally when the K6 power supply version came out, P48 was not available on a lot of mixers at the time. Now it's ubiquitous. It's almost everywhere. Everybody has phantom power P48 available. So the need for that power supply that'll take a AA battery in it, and it adds, if you look at the two microphones compared to each other, the regular ME66 on the left and the one with the power supply on the right, it makes it a whole lot longer, and it won't fit in a lot of windscreens. And shock mounts have to be different. The weight is different. So I think they just decided that the option, although the K6 allows you to either use phantom power or the internal battery because it's an electret condenser, that option is no longer really required since almost everything has P48 power these days.
Yeah, I wonder if one of the problems, too, is that people were buying them with the capsule that they were looking for. So they were buying with one of the options and never really buying multiple options so they can switch the pattern of the mic to go with that K6. If their research showed that, then it makes sense to kind of just drop back and just make the individual mics rather than trying to make a system like that. Some of the chat in our chat, Roscoe Jones, who I guess who's worked these, says definitely keep the capsule contact clean. Sent mine to location sound every year for a tune-up. Longer shotgun capsules failed first. The short ones kept going for years. So, and Mickey McAchore, our friend, says too expensive for its quality. That's his take on this. Alexander, you want to get back in on this?
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out, too, that Sennheiser obviously makes some fantastic shotgun mics, obviously the ubiquitous 416s and some of the other options that they have. I don't know what price range the ME66 came at, but a bit of a sleeper option is Audio-Technica. I know most people probably have more experience with their studio condenser mics, but they actually have a huge line of fantastic sounding shotgun mics, and some of the entry-level shotgun mics I've found punch well above their weight at that $500 price point. For example, like some of the options like the AT8035 or the AT897, these options are really good. They have low self-noise. They sound really good. And I find if you compare them to some of the other cheaper options on the market, like the Rode options in that $400 to $500 price range, and even in comparison to some of the Sennheiser stuff, they are very, very competitive.
Hey, don't forget, you can always ask questions. That's what this show runs on. And if you haven't gotten into Makana, that's our back-end system. If you go there, you will find an amazing group of people hanging out during the show live every day, answering even more questions and answering some of the same questions we deal with on the show, because that chat is linked to our show, in more depth with a lot of additional information. If you'd like to get involved, go to officehours.global/join. You'll get an email from us back, and once you kind of follow the breadcrumbs, you'll get in there. That's officehours.global/join. Adds a whole different level to watching our show every day. Next question.
This question is coming from David Brady in New York City, New York, USA. Thoughts on this camera to replace my ZCam E1?
And there's a link there to B&H, to a Yangnu camera, the YN433. Alexander Knight, what do you think?
You know, I don't know how much faith I have in a camera manufacturer that I've never heard of. that doesn't have any kind of reputation. So I probably wouldn't get something like this. I mean, with micro Four Thirds cameras, you have so many options. In fact, I'd point you in the direction of Panasonic because they actually have a box style format micro Four Thirds camera, which is really great for getting into tight spots. And, you know, micro Four Thirds, really inexpensive lenses. They're very ubiquitous. You can find them everywhere. So I'd have a look at the Lumix before I bought anything from this generic manufacturer.
I actually know a little bit about Yongnuo only because when I was fiddling around with photography, they were pretty well known in the still photography, low end thing for like flash triggers and stuff like that. So they've been around for a decade or so. I actually had some of their really simple triggers when I was expanding out into multiple flashes, radio triggered, and this stuff worked really well for its price. It wasn't as rock solid as some of the main manufacturer triggers and things like that, but they're not unknown out there. But I think that's they have always kind of targeted the low end of the market and looked at price more than build quality and things like that. Although my stuff from them always kind of works, so at least they're semi-known. Next question.
This one's from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. What's your favorite budget-friendly video light for a new creator looking to do mobile interviews on a college campus filming with iPhone?
Let's start with Courtney Gooden. Courtney?
I've always liked the Neewer lights, and you can get the little ones that are battery powered that clip on top of a phone that are bicolor, so that they'll do either daylight balanced or tungsten balanced, and that's important if you're going to be doing interviews that could be outside, could be inside. You want to match your fill light to match whatever ambient light is out there. So they make them as cheap as $20. So you could try one of those out and see how long the batteries last for you and if they work for your situation. And I've had pretty luck with the Neewer lights. One's lighting my big ugly mug right now.
Jason Beige.
Okay, so I hate to say it, but it really depends. You said you're doing interviews. Are you lighting one person or are you lighting two people? The way that you're going to do that, I can't assume sure, there are, a zillion of these tiny little things that take batteries and, can go on top of an iPhone. If you really want to do this and aren't just going TMZ style and just sticking a camera in someone's face, then I think the Godox P260C Pro bicolor is pretty good, and at $99, it's going to throw a lot of light on a lot of things. It can be modified, it can be scattered, or it can be thrown right up and have pretty good hard lighting right on a single person.
Jeffrey Powers.
So here's the thing: if you've got a phone, if you're just doing it like this, then putting a light on this is going to be pretty difficult to do unless you put a cage on it and then go from there. If that's the case, then I would highly suggest something like this. This is the Studio Light by ShiftCam because it's kind of like a ring light and it does go around, but you're also going to see glare from the light into the lens's possibility. Plus, if you're pushing it in front of somebody's face, a light like this is going to be right in their face, blinding them. So the first reaction they might have is, oh, okay. The best thing to do is to have a light that's going to be a little bit higher, pointing down at the subject, so light, light doesn't get into their eyes. That way you can answer it. But in order to do that, you're going to need a cage. You're going to need some sort of extension so a light can point down a little bit. And of course, if it's on its own cowboy stand, then something like the Godox that Jason showed, that's a great solution right there. But if you're running gunning it, then you're going to need something small. Something like the Studio Light might be your best answer.
Alexander wanted to get back in here at the end. Oh,
yeah, I would have a quick look at the Amaran stuff because I'm really big fan of those. I mean, Amaran is their more budget-conscious line from Aperture, and they have a whole series called the Pano series. I posted a link in the chat, so have a look at that option. They have a whole new range of smaller panel lights, and they're going to be a little bit more expensive than the newer and the Godox stuff, which, and by the way, those two brands are totally fine. It's just that I find that the Amaran stuff, the color quality is a little bit better, and I like the remote control capabilities through the Sidus Link app a little bit better.
Dan, Jeff, one of the things I mentioned to your nephew is that no matter what light you're using, if you've got backlight from the sun and you're trying to fill them, you're going to have to get that light so bright to get the exposure match that people are going to be kind of put off by how, a sun gun type light on a little phone can be just really annoying. So along with looking for a light, and there's nothing wrong with having a fill light for an outdoor thing. I've used them occasionally, usually in the shade where the light will have some impact on brightening up the face of my interview subject. But in the midst of all of that, understand that positioning people in the right place can be as important as using that fill light, which can be a boon to you. So just maybe mention that when you give the gift. Jason, you had some additional thoughts?
Yeah, to bring this full circle, assuming they too are in Texas, there's a fair bit of sun. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least say, get a reflector. You don't even need a person to hold it. Get a reflector and some sandbags and, just a way to keep it in one place. It's basically the only thing that's ever going to compete with the sun is the reflected sun.
Yeah. Kyle Hammond in the chat said, Jeffy, the other thing to consider is powering the light. Understand how it gets power and or recharge. Dead light is a paperweight. I have seen people go out to do interviews and a battery full up on a light sometimes doesn't last very long. James Haldane said, we use 650 watt lights when we go outdoor to do lighting for press events. So that's kind of the equivalent amount of light you would typically need if you're going to be shooting outdoors and want to do facial fill. Next question.
This question is one of mine. In mimoLive, there's a handy feature where you can add an automatic reframe to each zoom source to keep people in the center. If you wanted a live stream vertical video, what if you just wanted to apply that to the 9x16 out, not your 16x9 stream?
Ooh, Oliver Breidenbach is with us today. Oliver's going to answer this one. Oliver?
Yeah, a question I can answer. So you will probably not be surprised that there's several ways how you can do this. What Alexander is describing is a feature that allows you to automatically center a face, even if the camera can't move. I can't show it right now because that's what it's doing some weird stuff to the edges of things. So, but it's quite handy if you have like end-up layouts and want people to be centered and cut off the right stuff in the 16:9 video incoming. And of course, this is also handy if you want to convert 16:9 to 9:16. No, other. And the way you do that is, since mimoLive allows you to have multiple documents at the same time, if you want to do both 16:9 and 9:16, you should just send the video that you create for the 16:9 to the second document as a source, apply the filter there, and then you have the center automatic centering in that document. However, sometimes you want to use just the same sources for different outputs, and in that case, it's probably better to have just the feature on every source, and then work with that.
By the way, in case you don't know, Oliver is the head of mimoLive. So if you have any questions related to mimoLive, you got 15 minutes with Oliver on the panel. So take advantage of that. Next question.
This one's from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. If you have a heavy 6-foot rolling manual table or manual lift table with two LG 43-inch quads, a Beelink PC, and M1 Mac, how do you build out lights, cameras, a 4-port Atem, streamdecks, and keep it all self-contained, no floor stands or external devices?
Courtney Gooden's going to start us off here. Courtney?
Well, one thing you might look at is some tabletop laptop stands, because these can be used to put your Atem on so that you can put something else like a mixer underneath it, have the Atem like I do, have it floating above it. So that will let you double up on some of your horizontal real estate space, with flat top real estate spaces. There's a variety of these available for a variety of prices, from $30 to $100. One like this is available so that you can mount your Atem, and if you have a laptop or maybe the Beelink, it could be mounted underneath it or behind it, and then the Atem, and then a mixer slides underneath it, and that will only take up a small space of your real estate on your desktop, and lets you have a lot of the cables running out the back. That's the best way to do it.
Jason Beish.
No external devices. So are you asking how to put something on a desk where you have two 43-inch monitors that, if I'm doing the math right, are taking the entire back of the desk? Okay, no external devices. I'm sorry, I've got to cheat, because other than putting bars on desks, which I'm sure you've thought of, the other way to go is with a grid system on the ceiling. Other than that, it's really just guess, check, and play around.
Yeah. Jeffrey Powers, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking ceiling and back walls, any place that you can actually attach something to or affix something. If you've got wall mounts, you can definitely put them on there. But if you want this to be an all-in-one system, then you're going to have to build an on-table grid, which is basically bars at the corners all around. And of course, several different companies make stuff like that, but it's definitely going to look like a box. I had one table where I had both of my monitors right here, camera straight in the middle, and then of course one light to the side pointing down, and the option for a second light pointing down. And you can get these bars all on Amazon, of course, but then you have a full encompass table. I know that there's an Amazon influencer that used to do this. He would have a sit-stand rolling desk. They did have everything on it, and he'd move it around his space to get to different areas to unbox and show off different products. So it's definitely possible, but if you can put a little bit of light outside of the table, on the walls, on the ceiling, that's going to be your best bet.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you're looking for a pneumatically operated production cart. And I don't think I've seen anything commercial that is like that. Everything that you're talking about is generally the province of production carts, so you can roll around with multiple monitors and heavy loads. But I haven't seen any of those that pneumatically raise and lower. It'd be an interesting product category. Let's go to the next question.
This question is coming from Oliver Breidenbach from mimoLive headquarters. AppleTV used iPhone 17 Pro in productions for the MLS Cup Final last weekend. Real utility or marketing gimmick?
And Oliver, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I was watching that game, and they made a big fuss about it, using iPhone 17 Pros for production for the first time in whatever in this production, and then they just seemed to be using them at the beginning when they were talking about using them, and then at the very end after the game finished. Just to show some spectators from the stands, and I was wondering if those cameras can provide real production value, or if it's just their marketing department saying, use that because we want some marketing for iPhone 17 Pro.
Let's ask Jason Beish. Jason?
So I'm going to split that right down the middle. I think this is the precursor to some real production value. And the reason we're not seeing a whole bunch of stuff is because they're using this as a fallback. And, the minute stuff like F1 starts to roll out, when they know they're really pushing the envelope, I think that's when it may actually come into fruition.
Courtney Gooden.
I'd say marketing gimmick. It's probably a product placement deal where somebody's getting some money from Apple on the back end to use that and announce it and promote it. because there are a lot, you can get as competent a camera in a much smaller package because you don't have to have the phone and the touchscreen and everything else and the transmitters if you're going to just use it as a remote camera for your production. And by the time you get it converted from that USB-C connector to a format that is going to be compatible with your professional TV truck, there may be a great deal of latency involved, which is maybe why they just showed, people in the stands without sync sound or play action where they had to cut. And if you cut to it and the play happened 3 seconds ago, you might notice.
I think it's a stalking horse. Apple seems to have done this. I remember how aghast I was when Apple first moved into Apple TV. Their shows were horrible. I mean, Comedians in Cars with Coffee, that was like the oldest idea in the world, and they didn't do that much better. But the weird thing was they kind of wanted to just mount something and start learning. And that seems to be the Apple way to do that. It is, ship basic, then iterate. We've seen that with, Comedians in Cars with Coffee eventually becoming Ted Lasso. And we've seen that with phones that show up in something, and it's not that they're trying to say that this generation of phones is capable of doing that, but if they keep iterating and keep on that path, that first time that they showed us that the keynote, that Apple's main keynote had been shot entirely on iPhone, they didn't even make that big a deal with it. It was just a little subscript at the bottom. But then suddenly we're seeing more and more use of iPhones and things, and I don't think they're doing it to say, look, this is a tool right now. I think they're doing it to say, we are in that same glide path. We're going to start simple and start slow. We're going to keep iterating, and we'll see where it takes us. And whether your phone ever becomes a truly serious production tool for professional work, I don't know. Who knows? But I think they're iterating a lot. And that's how I think they get ahead of markets, by starting off, even if it's not perfect, and just refining until it becomes something truly special. We'll have to see whether that turns out to be true or not in terms of phones in production. Next question.
This question is coming from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. What transmitter would you suggest to replace the SHURE PGXD2 digital wireless X8 for speaking and live vocals in K-12 school gymnasiums? Forgiving capsule for poor mic technique appreciated. Budget $250 to $500.
Alexander Knight's going to help us out here. Alexander?
Yeah, I work with a lot of schools, and I'm always appreciative of lower budgets. But to be honest with you, for a wireless system, and I tell this to schools all the time, you need to spend more money on a wireless. It's not worth it getting a cheap wireless system. The PGX stuff is now discontinued. They weren't particularly frequency agile. There was, they have no external replaceable antennas. They're fixed to the system, and they just have an auto scan function with no ability to fine tune frequencies. So I wouldn't suggest that. My baseline recommendations now for anybody is the SHURE SLX-D line. It is more money, and in the US, it looks like they're about $700, $720, depending on the configuration. You can get them bundled with a headset here. I just pulled one up quickly on B&H since you're in the US here. This one's the guitar rig system, but they have a version of this with a Omni capsule head-worn microphone. These ones are far more agile and far more robust in terms of wireless transmission. I don't know about B&H, but I know up here in Canada with Long McQuaid, if you actually get a corporate account, we give you a special educational pricing discount. So you might want to check with companies like B&H or whoever the local dealers are down there to see if they have any kind of educational pricing, because you might be able to get one for less than $700. And it's something, remember, this is something you're not going to want to replace 2 to 3 years down the road. You're going to want this to last. So invest in something that's going to be considerably more robust, because our RF environments are not getting any easier to manage. Things are becoming more and more congested. There's you're dealing with cell phone towers and radio stations and broadcast, and there's a lot of stuff in the air. So don't cheap out on this stuff. The only other suggestion that I would have is, if it's really a deal breaker going past $500, would be to look at maybe through B&H if they have any kind of certified used products where you get some kind of warranty, is look at a used product like a Sennheiser G4 or perhaps even a used G3, which are often still very usable in many cities. So that's another option for you.
Jeffrey Powers.
So the microphone, it really depends on where you're holding the receiver, because if the receiver is way far away from the microphone, you're definitely going to need something that's going to be able to go across that gymnasium. So that's where something like an antenna distributor will come in very handy for that. As for the microphone is about a decade old, and a lot of technology, a lot of other microphones have already taken over that technology. One of the up-and-coming wireless microphone systems out there is called Phoenix, and they have some pretty low-cost microphones, and you can usually get a dual wireless system. I know the Toner has a really decent UHF system that's a dual mic wireless mic that's rechargeable via USB-C, so you can have that charging and not have to replace the AA batteries inside of there. So, and that's got a pretty decent range. There's been a lot of great reviews on that. I've reviewed it myself and really enjoyed it. We did a concert with eight of the Phoenix Pro microphones and worked really well. But once again, if you get a lot of interference in there, you're going to definitely have problems. And of course, it's all about that mic handling. If people are holding the microphone like they're holding, the end of the microphone, that's completely holding onto the capsule, you're going to have problems. If they hold onto the butt end of the microphone, you might have some interference issues. And of course, if you have all these different types of wireless guitar dongles and everything like that, that's going to cause interference as well.
Don't forget, it is Thursday, which means that tonight is The Rundown with David Paskin. He hosts a panel that takes a deep dive into the why behind the latest tech that's reshaping our world. Always a fun show to watch. That's tonight, The Rundown with David Paskin. Next question.
This question comes from Oliver Breidenbach. FxFactory is now available for DaVinci Resolve. Was the world waiting for more Resolve plugins?
I'm going to go to Courtney Gooden first. Were you waiting?
Oh, this world wasn't waiting for any. The one thing I hate is the stupid plugins that I see in every little YouTube documentary produced out there, especially the ones that degrade the image, look like, to make it look like a vintage film light leak, that we used to see when they opened the mag on a roll of film before, instead of changing it in the darkroom, or grunge effects, or, where they put the film sprocket hole on the left side to indicate that, hey, this is vintage footage, when it's probably just coming out of a video camera, and a lot of superimposed dirt, scratches going by. Why degrade the quality of your image for effect? Just say
Jason. Jason Bache.
Well, my world certainly isn't. In fact, I've spent a considerable amount of money trying to get rid of plugins and consolidating them. And, so no, my world certainly isn't. And I bet FxFactory is starting to recognize this trend and has to expand out into other markets to fill the void in the revenue. Jeffrey Powers.
I also think that FxFactory is realizing that a lot of people are going from an Adobe Premiere Pro, a Final Cut, to a DaVinci Resolve. They have FxFactory for those platforms, and so they need a way to port their projects over and be able to have some of the filters, some of the items that they put into those previous projects. So I'm guessing that this is just a vertical play, a vertical play for them, because they want people to be able to continue on if they need to pull up an old project or something like that. They might not get all the filters that they would have in Premiere Pro or Final Cut, but at least they'll get something that they can continue to work on from there. So it makes sense for FxFactory to be cross-platform, but as Courtney said, it's just basically an overlay. And yes, I do use them in my videos. Sorry, Courtney, but that's also how you keep retention in some of the viewers.
Time for our last question. Oops. Hello?
Oh, sorry. I got sidetracked. I wasn't paying attention.
That's all right. Easy
Walt
to do.
Palmer Walt Palmer in Lewis, Delaware is asking, it's Christmas parade time here in rural America. Suggestions for an inexpensive laser and fog machine I can mount on a float just to add color and movement.
That's going to be an interesting thing. I would like to see a fog machine on an outdoor float that's moving. Well, I guess it's possible. Maybe dry ice? No, that's not going to work. Anyway, Jason, dive in.
Okay, first things first, please do not put any laser on a moving vehicle where it can be knocked and blind somebody, like, anything that's bright enough to really actually be visible even through fog is not safe on a float. I would go plain and simple. A monoprice fog machine will get the job done. And the real magic of a fog machine isn't the fog machine, in my experience. It's the juice. And I do not remember. There is one set of fog juice that is just light years ahead of the rest of it. And you'll get a film on just about everything that it's been exposed to. But boy, does it make, like, not fog, but smoke. And instead of complementing that with a laser, I would get a few cheap strobe lights, and I would put color tints on them, and then go wild.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, just say no to lasers on floats. That there are OSHA requirements that prevent you from putting lasers in the public like that you cannot control them where people are, because you got to remember, people watching a parade could be up in buildings and windows and sides. So even if you have lasers shooting up, you can still nail somebody in the eyeball, which can cause permanent blindness if it's lasers of any, even the little handheld laser pointers can cause blindness if pointed directly into the eyeball. So maybe not lasers, maybe some lights that have beam forming, lenses on them. Those are okay, but stay away from the lasers. The problem with fog is, if you need to use it for effect like a volcano that looks like smoke, most fog juice these days is propylene glycol, which dissipates fairly quickly in the atmosphere. And you got to realize you're on a float that's moving. So the fog that you create is going to be 10 feet behind you in a few seconds. So keeping the fog that's generated, you'd have to run the fog generator in front of the float that you want the lasers, the lights.
Put it on the hood.
Jeffrey Powers.
Wind is not your friend either.
Let's get out of this nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. Wind is not your friend in this. That's why a lot of people use dry ice on floats, because dry ice stays low, as opposed to fog, which will go anywhere, everywhere. So, and of course, if you're on a windy day, it doesn't matter. So the lights, trying to do any type of haze or fog on a light outside, you might get the best solution if the float in the back, you have like a wall and an overhang, so the fog and the smoke goes into that overhang.
You need a fog shelf.
Yeah, basically that's the idea. But I don't think you won't get the effect that you're looking for, and you'll try and you'll still fail off of that.
Oliver, you want to make a quick final comment? Let you wrap things up.
Yeah, I think maybe a projector would work, and then use that to sort of projection map stuff on your float or on the walls that you pass by.
There you go, Jason. Quick.
I've got it. Okay, so get a 60-gallon aquarium. All right, put the fog machine in there, let that fill up, and then fill that the bottom of it with strobe lights, and that'll look real cool.
Or wrap your entire truck with saran wrap on a framework or something so that you control everything. My favorite comment in the comments was from Roscoe Jones. He said, put a potato in the tailpipe, you're done. Do not do this. You do not want carbon monoxide to push your lasers against. Anyway, thank you all for watching, for paying attention, for putting in your questions. Producers, without you, we are nothing. We thank you every day because you really do drive the show with your questions. So thank you so much for all of that. To the panelists for showing up every day, thank you all. The back-end crew is magnificent, marvelous, and we want to make sure that they get their due every single time. So thank you. Our Talk Traversal today, this is episode 2088. Continuously, 53,000 miles is how far we would have had to travel to get these questions from people in person. 86,000 kilometers. That is 422 million bananas for scale. Thanks for watching. We'll be right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Fog.
Best used for a 60-gallon aquarium found on Craigslist ever.
Besides, if you have
That's
so
a
much
viral
fog,
video right
won't
there.
be able to see the people on the float if you have a bunch of fog. What's the
If you're going to use the tailpipe trick and cover the back end of the truck, do not have people in there. That's all I got to say.
Wrap around LED screens. That's the thing.
Oh, there you go.
That's good.
Just stay home and watch it on
You
TV.
just got to
How
drag
about
a
that?
5,000-foot extension cord to power them all.
Hey, I love silly little parades, like little local parades. I don't know why. I just think they're charming when you got like 10 cars. And
Once we
everybody out
do
there
in
shining
New
stars.
Mexico, it's at night and it's the Christmas lights on the cars, and it is
there you go.
supremely cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we had in Phoenix. We had the electric light parade down Central, and it was just like all sorts of marching little